I'm Jace Lacob, and you're listening to Masterpiece Studio. Roughly 30 miles west of London lies the cozy town of Marlow. Beautiful meadows, quaint shops, and the gentle ripple of the Thames provide residents and visitors with a deceptively calm, tranquil atmosphere, the unexpectedly perfect setting for a murder. Our protagonist, Judith Potts, is hard at work on this week's crossword on a blistering July day. Once she finishes creating her latest puzzle, she rewards herself with a travel suite, and then it's off to the river. But nothing could prepare her for what happens next.
No. Get away!
God, no!
Mr. Dunwoody, are you all right? I'm coming!
A kerfuffle, followed by a gunshot at her neighbor Stephen Dunwoody's house, catches her attention while swimming, leading Judith to call the police. But when the police doubt her version of the events, Judith decides to do her own investigating and heads to her neighbor's property. She soon finds not only the bullet casing, but also her murdered neighbor in the river. Despite being ordered to leave the case alone, Judith is far too invested to walk away.
Mrs. Potts, my name's Detective Sergeant Tanika Malik. We spoke this morning.
We did?
Can I ask, what made you return to Mr. Dunwoody's property?
Oh, that's easy. The gunshot I heard last night. If you weren't going to take it seriously.
Over the course of episode 1, we meet our two other protagonists, Susie Harris and Bex Starling, whose own stories get swept up in Judith's orbit. At the end of episode 1, we find Judith at the police station talking with Detective Sergeant Tanika Malik about the brick and note that were recently thrown into Judith's house. Suddenly they get some news that makes their case even more complicated.
I've lived in this area my whole life, Mrs. Potts, and I can tell you categorically, there are no hitmen operating in Marlow.
Excuse me. Mom, there's been another shooting in Marlow.
Today, we talk with actor Samantha Bond about playing the inquisitive and mystery-loving Judith Potts and what might be in store for the rest of the season. This week, we are joined by the Marlow Murder Club star, Samantha Bond. Welcome.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Episode 1 of Marlow Murder Club offers Judith Potts a strikingly apt introduction. She methodically creates a crossword puzzle, strips off her clothes, and goes for a swim in the Thames. She is a woman who lives by her own rules, relishes mystery, and revels in her own freedom. What did you make of Judith when you first read the scripts?
Oh, gosh. I was sent the scripts on a Friday night asking if I'd like to be considered. And I read them over the weekend and then sent an email to my agent on the Monday saying, yes, please, very much. I hadn't done wild swimming in the Thames, and that's a bit of an adventure in itself. But I love a crossword puzzle. I like a glass of whiskey, but I don't have mine at 6 o'clock at night, which Judith likes. It's to give her the strength for the river, I think. But I just thought the scripts were so brilliantly, I use the word convoluted in a good way, because a murder mystery needs to be complicated. And that's exactly what Robert Thorogood has done.
Robert's Marlowe novel begins with, Mrs. Judith Potts was 77 years old and entirely happy with her life. She lived in an arts and crafts mansion on the River Thames. She had a job she loved that took up just enough of her time and no more. And best of all, she didn't have to share her life with any man. While your Judith is considerably younger than 77, do you feel that summation still sums her up entirely, particularly the bit at the end that she didn't have to share her life with any man?
Yes, I think that is a very good summation of it. She doesn't share her life readily with anyone. She meets the other two women who are going to be crucial to solving the mystery, but she doesn't welcome them with open arms. She is used to her own company. She's very used to it. She's been alone for a long time before we meet her.
As you say, she doesn't welcome anyone with open arms. She sort of has closed arms, but closed arms are also sort of a self-embrace. And I think that's what I love about Judith is, as much as she is sort of a solitary figure, she's entirely content within her solitude. She likes her life, a life that she has created.
I think that's a great description of her. Yeah, she's very comfortable with herself and her cat, I should say. Yeah, no, she likes her life. She will enjoy the intrigue that is coming because as an archaeologist, she loves delving. She has a forensic interest in how things come around. And that's really there from the very beginning of season 1.
And like Judith, you yourself have a passion for puzzles.
I do.
How does this manifest within your own life?
Well, I love a cryptic crossword. There were other things that I didn't realize when we were filming season 1 is how many similarities there were between Judith and my mum. Because my mum loved a crossword. She loved a glass of whiskey. She taught me how to do cryptic crosswords because there is a sort of a learning curve to them to know which clues you're looking for, which clues to discard. So, yeah, she's someone I feel very familiar with.
Did you connect as well with that sort of cleverness on the part of your mother as well? That maybe that was what sort of drove that puzzle solution. Was it a cleverness? Was it additionally sort of a need for mystery?
I don't think it's to do with cleverness. I don't think me or Judith or my mum would necessarily describe ourselves as clever, but hugely curious and hugely determined to solve. I think cleverness is a slightly different thing.
There is a tranquility and beauty to the opening scenes of Marlow Murder Club with Judith, a sense of freedom that's both physical and psychological as she swims au naturel in the river by her home. There's the physical aspect, but you're also working here to establish this character from the jump. How challenging was it to film these swimming punting scenes?
It's one of the most challenging things I've ever done in nearly 43 years in this business. The River Thames is beautiful, but it is awesome. And at Marlow, it's very, very big. You know, I live very near the Thames in London, but the Thames in London is kind of quiet. In Marlow, it's immense. And that was a very daunting day.
Your husband, Alex, is a keen wild swimmer. Did he offer you any tips ahead of time before you jumped in?
No, he didn't. But he is a keen wildwater swimmer, and he talked a lot about the cold. But no, all I can say is it's very frightening, and I was being very brave, and I would pay squillions to have been in a water tank, but I wasn't.
I love the moment when DS Tanika Malik calls and asks for Judith Potts, and Judith says,
Hello.
Good morning. This is Detective Sergeant Tanika Malik. Is Mrs. Judith Potts there?
I'll just get her for you. Hello, Judith Potts here.
It's such a telling moment about appearances and propriety.
Yeah.
Why do you think she does this?
Well, it's mainly because the phone call has woken her and she's still very sleepy and she's got her very sleepy voice. And she doesn't want to be heard like that. So she pops a light on, she takes a slug of water, she sits up, I think, and tries to sound like the normal Judith Potts. I'm sure we've all done it.
I might have to after this. I pick up the phone and I'm feeling slightly not myself and pretend to be my assistant, perhaps. I like it.
Your generation will have their mobile phone by their bed, so you can see who's calling and you can decide whether to pick it up or not. Judith doesn't have that. As you will discover, she's not very good with mobile phones and iPads and modern technology. But all she knows is that the landline beside her bed has rung and she should answer it.
So Stefan Dunwoody's body is missing. The police doubt Judith's story, but she knows what she heard. She says to her cat,
"The problem is we're empiricists, aren't we, Jasper? To investigate, we will need the right tools. Knowledge can be derived by what is observed and measured. And I know what I observed.
This is a transformative moment as Judith goes from busybody to archaeologist with her kit. How did you look to play that internal shift?
I think it was just the truth of the story that Judith was in. She did know what she'd heard. I think at some point someone suggests it was a motorcycle backfiring. She knows it wasn't. She also knows that she called out to Stefan to see if he was all right, to which there was no reply. She knows she heard a kerfuffle, which is one of my favorite words.
The best.
And I think it's all of that leads her to the chest of drawers to get her archaeology equipment out. She knows there's something to be found. She doesn't know what it is yet. That's the way her head works. I will go and discover. And she does.
And she does. And yet she hides her kit from Tanika behind her back, despite minutes earlier measuring bullets and using all manner of investigative skills. Why does Judith conceal her true nature here? And what goes through her head in the moment Tanika walks up and she hides her kit?
Oh, that's a very good question. Is it because she doesn't want Tanika to know that she's measured the bullet? She doesn't want to disclose. She's disappointed already with the police investigation so far. So why should she share with this woman that she doesn't yet know? I think it's all of those things combined. I think, just not wanting to give away too much, not until she knows the truth.
So we're still in episode 1. We're a long way off from establishing the crime-solving team of the series.
Okay.
But I am curious, what does Judith make of Tanika initially? As either a possible collaborator or a foe, what does it mean that D.S. Malick is a woman rather than a man here? Does it complicate or simplify their dynamic at all?
I think Judith would be even less willing to share had it been a man. But I think it's Tanika really who shows wariness of Judith rather than the other way around. Although, as I've just said, I think that Judith doesn't believe the police have done a good enough job. And if Tanika is the front of that, then I think she would be wary to trust her.
Before this next question, a brief word from our sponsors. Ocean voyages, expeditions, river journeys. Viking is dedicated to bringing travelers closer to the destination, offering a small ship experience and a shore excursion in every port. Learn more at Viking.com. There's a lot of unexpected humor within the Marlow Murder Club. I love the scene, for example, where Judith finds Bex hiding out inside the church cupboard. How do you think humor differentiates the Marlow Murder Club from other murder mysteries? Do comedic moments like that one help to puncture some of the show's tension?
I think absolutely the humor is hugely important. And yes, as you say, the scene with Bex is gorgeously silly. And I think that's where Robert's so clever, is that just when you think things are getting maybe a little bit too serious, something sometimes, frankly, ludicrous happens. I think the humor's a huge part of it.
Judith uses her tin of travel sweets to her advantage, but she also excels at finding people's emotional triggers. She quotes the Bible at Bex, "Whomsoever knows what is right to do and fails to do it, for him it is a sin," to get her on side. Where does Judith's emotional intelligence, knowing how to push the right buttons, come from?
Well, I think we were talking about cleverness earlier, but she may not be, or she wouldn't think of herself necessarily as clever, but she is enormously well-read, enormously well-educated, and she will draw on anything to get to the soul of someone else.
I love get to the soul of someone else. I love that. What does Judith make of Bex and Susie? Does she see herself in them somehow kindred spirits? They all, to me, seem a bit lost in their own way initially.
Yes, I think that's true. I don't think that Judith initially thinks of them as kindred spirits, but I think she thinks they could be useful. She's not shy of using people, and they offer different things. So Judith is relatively new to the area, is indeed Bex. But Bex is part of the church and therefore a solid part of the community. Susie knows a whole lot of different people. So I don't think Judith is shy to use their knowledge, to use the other bits that they can bring to an investigation.
What is it like filming in the real life Marlow in Buckinghamshire, which is most distinctly not a murder hotspot?
It is not a murder hotspot, but it is beautiful. And all the locations you see are in Marlow. So we never go more than, 5-7 miles outside. And I lived there, I stayed there, and just the warmest people. And they could choose two things. They could decide that we were really, really annoying and could we please go away? And then they decided we weren't terribly annoying. So it was a gorgeous experience doing it. And every cafe you see, every coffee shop, every auction house, everything you see is real and is in Marlow.
Does that lend itself some kind of reality? Does it anchor it in a way that other shows set in fictional locales that are not shooting in actual places can't achieve?
I think it gives it an authenticity. And, in season 1, we have the regatta, and there are actors there, obviously, acting at the regatta, but the rest of the regatta is going on regardless. I mean, it's just heaven.
By the end of episode 1, Judith hasn't yet crossed paths with Susie, but the sleuths are starting to come together, particularly as Susie is drawn into this web through the discovery of the body of her client, Iqbal. Mm-hmm. What can you tease about what lies ahead in the next 3 episodes?
Judith has got to the point in episode 1 when she even hears a police siren, she reacts. So she knows that Stefan was killed. She knows that. She's certain. And then she hears police sirens just a wee bit across the town. So she pursues them. And that's when she first meets Susie, who's very distressed because it's, as you say, a client of Susie, the dog walker who has been killed. So Judith makes an absolute point of befriending a woman she's never met before who might have some secret or an opening into the next crime.
Mm. Your earliest television roles include Maria Bertram in Mansfield Park and Ms. Liz in Rumpel of the Bailey. Your parents were both in the industry. How did your desire to act professionally come about?
Oh, well, what I wanted to be was a ballerina. And I went to regular school, but I was training 3 or 4 times a week with the junior Rambert. And when I was 14, I was like a stick insect. And then I did puberty and I became rather large. And my mum used to call me the bouncing ballerina. However, at the age of 15, you apply to senior ballet schools, which I did, and I didn't get in. And then I walked back into my grammar school in the September, and I had this incredible teacher called Berenice Goodwin, who taught handwriting, calligraphy, art, and history of art. And when I walked back into school in the senior years, I don't know what they are in American terms, but I was 16 years old. And she went, "Oh, you're still here." I didn't get into ballet school. And then she put the script of Electra into our hands. And she had worked professionally in the theatre as a director, as a dancer, as a choreographer. So our school plays were in a small but professional theatre in London. And that was it, really. And she directed me in 3 plays. We had a boys' school down the road, and I must have done 3 plays with them. There's a famous production of the Caucasian Chalk Circle, in which I appeared with Hughie Grant and Nigella Lawson, none of us playing the leads. So it was really the script, Electra, let's do it. And that was it, really.
Amazing. I was going to ask about Brecht's The Caucasian Chalk Circle, which is amazing to me that you were on stage alongside Hugh Grant and Nigella Lawson in a school production, of all places. Is amazing. I saw you perform opposite Dame Judi Dench in Amy's View at the Aldwych, which remains a hallmark of theater for me. How did that experience shape the actor that you are today?
Oh, gosh, that's a huge question. I've got to try and do this without crying, okay?
Oh.
But no, it's okay, because we've just lost Maggie. So when I did 3 Tall Women with Maggie Smith when I was about 35. And then I did Amy's View with Judy when I was 38-ish. And you're working with, it's like being on stage or trying to race against some thoroughbred horse. And you do everything within your power you can't equal them, but to support them well enough so that they can give the performance of a lifetime. And both Maggie and Judy in those 2 plays gave the performances they've both given many, but it's an immense privilege. You have to try quite hard not to be too daunted. And of course, the thing about Judy is it can always make her laugh. Maggie didn't corpse.
That tracks.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Dame Maggie Smith. We are sadly speaking shortly after her passing. On the day her death was announced, I went back and watched Downton Abbey, A New Era again. Did the end of that film, did filming those funeral scenes for Violet take on a new resonance now that Maggie has passed?
To be honest, I haven't. I've got a tissue. The shock of her passing and the grief at her loss has been so immense that I haven't thought about Downton Abbey. That's the truth. What I keep trying to hold on to is the immense privilege. So if I say I was 34 or 35 when we did 3 Tall Women, I'm about to be 63. So to have had her for 30 years and the Downton years, is a huge privilege. And then in the theatrical charity world, we have here a charity called the Royal Theatrical Fund, and I'm very honoured to be currently the chair. But Mags has been a vice president for, maybe 7 or 8 years. So when she wasn't working, once a month, we'd meet anyway, and we might have lunch. Sir Derek Jacobi is another vice president, and of course, they've known each other since they were 25. So I just feel, as I say, immensely privileged to have had that friendship in my life.
Samantha Bond, thank you so very much.
It's been a great pleasure. Bless you.
Next time, Judith, Susie, and Bex work together to gather more information.
The receipt for it is written in Elliot's handwriting.
Well, how can you know that?
Because Bex managed to get a photo of it.
Only because you created the most brilliant diversion.
Yeah, I did, didn't I? Up top.
Yes.
In 3 weeks, actor Samantha Bond joins us once again to look back on the season and bring this whodunit to a close. Masterpiece Studio is hosted by me, Jay Slay Cobb, produced by Jack Pombriant, and edited by Robin Bissett. Alicia Etup is our sound designer. The executive producer for Masterpiece is Suzanne Simpson.